This is gonna be a crazy month. I read The American Queen. Here's my history with this book. In a crazy night, I listened to most of the audiobook while taking care of illness and sleeping. I kind of knew what I was getting to, but I didn't really know what I was getting into, and I therefore needed to buy this book and read this book physically. The audiobook is not doing it for me. I got it, but I knew it was going to destroy me in some ways, and it did. Oh man, Sierra Simone's officially the first book of hers that I've been able to finish. It is so worth it. It's part of this new Camelot series, and I hear they just get more emotionally devastating as we go, so we'll see. I bought the whole series because, of course I bought the whole series. I needed to know how this ends. Even if I don't actually read it, I need to have the ending in my physical possession. So you've got Greer, Ash, and Embry, and there is a lot of history. Ash is the president of the United States. Embry is his vice president, and Greer has a history with both of them. And it comes to fruition in this book, in the present as it is. She's 25, 26. It is so heartbreaking and so beautiful. And there is kink. There's good kink. There's a lot of great discussion about kink. I wish there were more scenes. Sierra Simone did such a great job of showing how these two felt about their preferences, about their history, about their feelings on their own sexuality and how it is involved with others. Also, Sierra Simone is never going to ever keep you safe. She's never going to keep you safe. The twists in this book had me going, ugh, oh, I can't, what could possibly be next? Now, I will say, none of those real twists are about Ash and Embry and Greer, so I was able to stomach them. But I do worry for my sanity when reading a book like this. Like, what is this going to do to me in the long term? I loved this book. I thought it was really well done. I enjoyed the timeline switching. There were moments of deep discomfort, but the resolution was so worth it. This book also does end on a cliffhanger, which I didn't know. I hadn't finished the book in the audio version, so I hadn't gotten past the wedding. I don't even think I watched her walk down the aisle in the audiobook version, so everything after that was completely new for me, and whoo, man, I absolutely inhaled it. I put off other things in my life so I could read it. If I folded laundry, I read a chapter. If I filled up my water glass, I read a chapter. If I drank the water glass, I got to reward myself with a chapter. It was so good, and I enjoyed it so much that I am nervous to continue in this series, but I feel like the emotional payout will be worth it. Tell me it's worth it. Sometimes you are bullied for a good cause, and that is what happened with Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. I attempted this book, I can't even tell you when, and for some reason it was not for me. I DNF'd it. Jess from Literary Intersections said we couldn't be friends if I didn't like this book, and I really like her, so let me just give it another try. I have no idea what was going on in my life at that time to make me hate this book so much, but I really enjoyed it this second time around. It was sad because I kept waiting for the thing I didn't like to happen, and it didn't happen. So I feel like there was some anticipation of dislike that I had with this book that made me step out from just enjoying the experience. This is a sapphic romance. You have Delilah and Claire. Delilah is the estranged stepsister of Claire's best friend, and Delilah has been hired to be Astrid's wedding photographer. So they all meet up in the hometown. Claire doesn't recognize Delilah. Delilah had a crush on her from way back when. It is a lot of fun. And so there's this interesting stepsister's best friend situation. What I really enjoyed is often there's a lot of machismo with brother's best friend or best friend's brother, and there isn't that. There's drama, don't get me wrong. There's drama about her best friend's stepsister, but it's not the same. And that's really how I felt about this whole book. Claire is a single mother, and often in single mom stories, the MMC, if it's an MMC, races in and saves her and is her white knight. And that didn't happen here. It was about their relationship and do they like each other? What are they connecting about? How are they growing as people and as a couple? And I loved that. That was great. One of the things I remember disliking about this book was intimacy, and I felt like it was really soft and squishy and not appealing. I don't know what stars were misaligned. I don't know what things were happening in my personal life that made me dislike it so much, because this time around I thought it was really enjoyable. Then this is the thing with books. Maybe whatever they were doing I didn't want to do, and it really hit me hard. And there are still things in this book and in this story and in their intimacy that I was like, you know what, that's just not for me. And that's fine, but it didn't hit me in the way that it must have the time before for me to DNF this book. And I got pretty far into this book. When I finished this book, I realized I had maybe 100 pages left that I did not finish last time. So y'all, I cannot explain it, and I don't really need to. You don't need any reason to DNF a book. At the time of my life, it wasn't for me. Did I put it aside and have a much better experience this time? Absolutely. So am I happy in the end that I did DNF this book? I am, because I think if I'd forced myself to finish it back then, I would have continued to say no thank you. And the fact that I didn't finish it was what allowed me to go, you know what, I'll just give it another shot and see what happened. Ashley Herring Blake has a bunch of other books in this series. All three of the best friends, Claire, Astrid, Iris, get their own story. And I might have to continue. I am so happy that I un-DNF'd this book. Don't judge a book just because it's not your kink. That is the lesson to be learned from Rainbow Sprinkles by Pepper North. There's a whole series, double digits. They're really novellas. I'm not gonna lie, that was part of the appeal. I really wanted to finish a book and I was slogging through a couple other ones, but this is an adorable story. It is novella length, so I feel like some of that conversation, some of that tension, some of that build of the relationship that happens in a full book just wasn't able to happen here. It's through no fault of Pepper's. It's a novella. That's exactly what you do. And that's pretty typical of all romantic novellas. This is a big little story. Now in this series, they call it Daddy Little because I believe every single partnering, and I haven't looked at all 20, like 15, 20, 8,000. I haven't looked at them all, but I'm pretty sure they're all male big, female little. And if you're not familiar with the big little kink, go listen to the Pink Kink podcast, their definitions. They do a really good job of defining big and little and that dynamic. I really am not as aware of it. I haven't practiced it. This story might have been incredibly clear to someone who's in that world and this is their kink and this is their preference. I felt like I needed a little bit more conversation around expectations and what was going to be happening in the play that they engaged in. There were moments when I went, I'm sorry, you really should have talked about this before you put her in a crib. If that weirds you out, please, this is all consenting adults. Do not kink shame. We do not kink shame here. That is absolutely not allowed. But for me, I don't know what's standard. I don't know what's typical. I don't know what the general consensus of this type of kink in this play is. So I was very surprised. I needed that conversation. I needed those discussions. And when it comes to novellas of vanilla or kink, there is often that conversation that's removed. What was great was a lot of consent conversations, even though they didn't go into details about planning out a scene or planning out their kink or laying out, what's in his nursery. Oh my gosh, I should say their names. I just know him as Daddy. His name is actually Garrett. And then you've got Ellie, who he calls Rainbow. She has a cupcake store and he's her landlord. They meet up. Turns out they both also go to the same kink club in their area. It's not one person, opening the other to the lifestyle. They're both part of it and they find each other. I enjoyed it. If you love a big little story, absolutely. Pepper North has got you. With Rainbow Sprinkles and all the books to come. If you are intrigued by Big Little, this is a pretty easy intro. It's very short. It's very clear. They fall hard. They fall fast. They're committed almost right away. And so there isn't that emotional angst that a full-blown story might have. I think that Pepper did a really great job. I needed a little more conversation, but y'all, that's on me. That's on me. I'm a little thirsty. I'm a thirsty man. Who would have thought I'd love a romance from the male perspective only? But I did. The book is Thirsty by Mia Hopkins, and the entire book is from his perspective. I don't think I've ever read an entire romance novel where we only get the MMC. If it is male female, we almost never get entirely the male perspective. And I thought at a certain point I would dislike it, or I would grow mad, or I would go, ugh, but I loved it even more. This is why I love men written by women. I enjoyed being in his brain. I enjoyed listening to his thought process, and I liked the emotional angst that we saw from his side. Sal and Vanessa, MMC, FMC. I know I switched it up because this is all from Sal's perspective. They grew up in the same neighborhood in LA. Sal was in the gangs and he just got out of prison. Ends up renting Vanessa's grandmother's garage as a place to stay to save up cash for his own apartment. Vanessa and he kind of knew each other. He had a crush on her way back when. She has had many life things happen to her. He has had many life things happen to him. And their connection and their chemistry is incredibly palpable. Sal is looking to get out of that life, and Vanessa is looking to leave that life behind. He's out of prison, but how does he get out of the expectations of the gang that he was part of? And we get to see him find a new life path, which was really fun. It was super fun. Eastside Brewers is the name of the series, and there's beer involved, and I loved it. There were some really heavy moments in this book because of their given circumstances. This is the difference between morally gray and dark romance. Like, this didn't even hit morally gray for me because it's someone who has a past who's trying to escape that past. When it comes to their intimacy, this was a lot of fun. Both of them hint at kink, and we don't really get into a ton. I don't think anything that happened in this book is kinky. It does not cross my line for vanilla to kink, but what I do like is they talk a lot about what they want. They have discussions about what they're willing to try. They buy toys, they use lube, they experiment with each other because they feel safe and open. There's a lot of pleasuring of the FMC, and it's entirely from the male perspective. So there isn't even that, oh, I loved it, it was so great, I mean, so wonderful that a guy's finally into it. We got only the male perspective about how excited he was to be with her and how much he loved her, and appreciation of his partner from that perspective. And that was super, super fun and enjoyable to watch. This book, while short, didn't make me feel like I was missing out on storyline or character development. Between the two of them, you got to watch them really go for the things in their life that had meaning, to overcome obstacles and to find each other, both on how are they going to communicate and how are they going to move forward in their life after that. They do really sweet things for each other. They care for one another, and that is always fun to watch. There are two other books in this series. I believe they follow Sal's brothers. I own them both. I have no idea if they follow Sal's brothers, but I assume I will be reading them now. So that was Thirsty by Mia Hopkins. Oh my God. Sometimes you need a fluffy rom-com to just shake you out of a rut, especially when that fluffy rom-com contains voices that you were not expecting to hear. I read The Romantic Agenda by Kann. I cannot believe this wasn't on my radar sooner. We've got Joy, who is our FMC. She is Black and she is asexual, and that is a person that is not often showcased as the lead of a romantic story. And I'm so glad that this book exists, because I know there are people out there who are looking for their own story and wondering if being asexual means that they are not the leads or the love interests in the world, if they are not capable of finding love and being loved, and that is not true. If you think that's true, get off this page. I won't even engage with you. You have Joy, who is our lead, and she is asexual, she is Black, and she has a best friend, Malcolm, who is also asexual and also Black, and she has been in love with him for 10 years. She feels like no one will understand her the way that he does. No one will step up for her. No one will care for her the way that he does. And he does. He really cares. He is such a good friend. However, he is not romantically interested in her. Just because you're asexual doesn't mean you don't date. Doesn't necessarily mean you don't have sex. It means you don't experience sexual attraction, or you only experience it. You know what? Go to the definitions episode of my podcast, or scroll down to the definition of asexual that I posted. I'm not taking time for that here. Malcolm is dating someone new who wants to meet Joy because they are best friends. Their relationship has caused problems with his romantic partners in the past. So he plans this weekend getaway between him and Summer, the love interest, Joy, our main character, and Fox, Summer's best friend. They all go to this cabin in the woods, and we watch their dynamics play out. Fox decides, hey, we should fake date for you, because maybe the reason Malcolm has never made a move is you're just always there, And if he sees you dating someone else, he'll realize he's in love with you. Actually, Fox is there because he thinks Malcolm's in love with Joy. And if Malcolm's in love with Joy, then he's a bad choice for Summer. I remember it. As Fox and Joy, very grumpy sunshine, by the way, very grumpy sunshine, as they get together and get to know each other, they develop real feelings for each other and a genuine connection. One of the best parts of this book is the conversations that we witness about asexuality and what it's like to live as an asexual person and be in relationships with other humans as an asexual person. And something that Joy brings up is physical touch for Joy means different things than it does for other people. And so she's very aware and very sensitive to the needs of others. Because she knows she doesn't experience things in the same way and she doesn't view things as sexual or not sexual, she has often gotten signals crossed or been accused of putting out signals that she's definitely not putting out. And so she's hyper aware of the importance of physical intimacy and boundaries. That goes from putting a hand on someone's shoulder to holding hands to kissing to all of it. She's very aware of it. And the conversations that she and Fox have about what I'm comfortable with and what I'm not comfortable with and what are you doing and how is this okay, those were really important because often we just assume that everyone has the same relationship with physical touch as we do, and that is not the case for a variety of reasons. Yes, asexuality is one example, but there are a lot of reasons that people have different boundaries with physical touch that I'm not going to get into in this moment. So watching the two of them discuss it and how are they going to communicate effectively between the two of them as they go into this fake dating scenario was really, really lovely. They create a safe word system. I love a safe word. And in the end, what happens is a romantic connection between her and Fox. Not sexual, but romantic. And that is something that is also important to remember, is asexual is not aromantic. You might not want sex or feel sexual desire or any of those things, but you want romance and you want connection with another human. And so to see Joy get a happily ever after with Fox, this person she has this really beautiful emotional connection with, was important. I think it's important for people who are on that astemmy gray spectrum to see themselves represented as worthy of love, affection, and main character energy.